afternoon, everyone. I am Kathy Neifeld, an Executive Vice President with SPG Life and Annuity, and I am thrilled to be bringing you our first webinar in what is going to be at least a monthly webinar series that is going to primarily feature our Chief Advanced Marketing Officer, or CAMO, as I like to call him, Gonzalo Garcia. Gonzalo oversees advanced markets for SPG Life and Annuity, and he is the go-to individual for all advanced markets, life insurance cases, and designs for your high net worth individuals. Today, this webinar is going to focus on $30 trillion in low-hanging fruit, or repurposing qualified money for legacy planning. So without further ado, it is my privilege to turn this over to Gonzalo Garcia.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm thrilled to do this for the first time as SPG Life and Annuity. Super psyched to get this series rolling. And today we're going to talk about having the IRS fund family legacies. And before I kick this off, I would like to share with you just a quick video that I'm a Game of Thrones fan. I'm sure there's many of you on this call that are as well. But let me just start with Tywin Lannister's definition on legacy. Hope you can all hear this.
This is the one I'll be remembered for. The War of Five Kings, they're calling it. My legacy will be determined in the coming months. Do you know what legacy means? It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.
It's what remains of you when you're gone. So that really kind of hit a chord with me. So kind of what is legacy? And this is what I like to talk to advisors and clients about is, legacies, it's the need or desire to be remembered for something you've contributed in the world. And for most of us mere mortals, while there are some people that will and ultimately change the world somehow. For most of us mere mortals, it's usually about how we're remembered and the lasting footprint that we leave on those people that are close to us. But legacies can be intentional or unintentional. They can be positive or negative. And, if one's not careful or intentional about the legacy that you're creating, sometimes an unintended legacy will be created for you. Legacies more often than not just kind of happen. So let me tell you a story about Alfred Nobel. And I'm sure many of you have heard what he was really known for was the Nobel Prizes in chemistry and physics and the Peace Prize and so on, very famous. But he invented dynamite. And Alfred was a chemist and he was fascinated with explosives, especially nitroglycerin, which was a really unstable substance. And his family had a factory. And in 1864, in Stockholm, the factory suffered an explosion which killed 5 people, including his younger brother, Emil. He vowed after that to find a way to stabilize nitroglycerin. And in 1867, 3 years after the tragic accident, he was able to obtain a patent for a stable form of nitroglycerin, which he called dynamite. And that is how he made his money. Dynamite began to be used in quarries and tunnels as fortunes grew. But not long after that, the explosives started to be used on the battlefield, and his invention had crossed a line and its uses could no longer be controlled. In 1988, this newspaper was sitting on the doorstep of his Paris walk-up, and it said the Merchant of Death is dead. The fact was that his brother Ludwig had passed away, and the newspaper mistook the 2 brothers. Until his passing in 1896, he was haunted by the fact that his legacy, or what he would be remembered for, would be the Merchant of Death, and that he found ways to kill more people faster than ever before. That really haunted him. But when he passed away, he dedicated 94% of his estate to the establishment of the Nobel Prize. So that was his unintended legacy, and this was his intentional legacy. So he really fought through that whole issue of kind of what was he going to be remembered for. And of course, we all now know that the Nobel Peace Prize is, and all the Nobel Prizes, but certainly the Peace Prize is, one of the most prestigious awards that anybody can win on the planet. So I wanted to bring that forward because I think that this kind of sets the stage for the issue of intentional versus unintentional legacies. And, the decisions that you make today can create an intentional legacy. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this webinar. So we've all seen this before, right? We've sat in front of clients and we've asked them, if you could disinherit one of these three, which one would you pick? And invariably, unless somebody really just dislikes their children or loves the IRS, they're going to say the IRS is the one that I will choose. I would rather leave money either to my children or to charity. I don't think I've sat across the table from anybody even once that would have said the IRS. And we've all seen this question before, but here's the issue. Most people are unintentionally disinheriting their children from a massive portion of their IRA or other qualified assets. And that is the IRD tax, the income in respect of a decedent tax. And we all know that non-spousal beneficiaries of IRAs are going to have to pay tax on inherited dollars from their parents. And that it has to be, according to Secure Act 2.0, has to be taken out of the account within a 10-year period. So the IRS is, in fact, a beneficiary, unintended beneficiary of everybody's IRA after a spousal beneficiary, obviously. So, what can we do about that? And this case, which I'm going to share with you now, is kind of how all of this came about. We were presented with an advisor who presented us a case of, I'll call her Jane Smith. And Jane had recently widowed. Her husband had passed away, leaving her $3 million of life insurance, fortunate for her. And she added that money to her investment, non-qualified investment account. He also had $3,000 of Social Security benefits per month and a $3 million IRA, which she stepped into his shoes on. So they had a home and some other personal property. So let's call it about $8 million in net worth. No meaningful estate tax issues, no state estate tax in this client's life. There were really kind of no issues around planning. She was set up for a pretty good life. And I was talking to her financial planner. We had talked about her assets and so on and her situation. We had also talked about the fact that she needed or wanted about $150,000 after taxes to kind of live her life. And she had asked the advisor if she could also draw down another 30 grand to do some travel and see her children and so on and so forth. So this all resulted from a financial plan that had been done in eMoney. And so as we worked through some of these issues on some planning ideas, we came about with these thoughts, and I'll share that with you. But this was what her financial plan looked like at the time shortly after her husband's death. Her children would inherit about $12.5 million after her lifestyle spending, and she would have just short of $2 million in IRD taxes or in wealth transfer taxes based solely on the account balance of the IRA estimated at her age 85. So we looked at age 90, 87, 92, et cetera, but let's just use age 85 for this example. On the right side of the chart, you see some orange bars. That's her Social Security income going up with indexing over the years. The red bars are her non-qualified accounts. And here's what bothered me the most about this whole plan is that the purple bars are her IRA distributions. And you can see that they start at age 75. She was 62 at the time. So she was already in the age 75 RMD age. So that people born after 1960 can start electing RMDs at age 75. So that's kind of how this plan was built. And it was that defer the IRD, the RMDs as far as possible and start taking them. But as you probably all know, when you're taking RMDs, the values of IRA accounts actually continue to grow, assuming a positive market. And they will continue to grow at some reasonable rate of return until about age 90. And then they'll start to come down again. So the problem, the IRD problem, just keeps compounding over time and likely at her life expectancy or maybe even longer than that. So this caused some problems because she had plenty of other assets, and the IRD, the RMD taxes were just going to continue to compound for her. She really didn't want or need that income. And I think that's probably one of the key issues of this whole conversation is that we need to look for client opportunities in the context of people who have IRAs or 401k plans or other qualified assets that likely will not need them. So let's kind of go through how we disinherited the IRS to create what Jane Smith thought was a really wonderful legacy and engaged her children in a meaningful way. So this is kind of why I started out with this whole legacy issue. So the recommended planning that we did for Jane was she was not incredibly charitably inclined, but she did not like the IRS as much. And that kind of gets to that other question. So what we talked about was setting up a donor advised fund in the name of their family. She was all about family. She had loved her husband. They had had a beautiful life. So, and she was very engaged with her children. So setting up a donor advised fund in the name of the family was step number one. Step number two was we were going to make a recommendation for her to purchase $5 million of coverage on her life with her children as beneficiaries. There was some debate as to whether it would be owned in a trust or not a trust, but it ended up being not owned by a trust. She was not concerned about the value of the estate exceeding the 15 or really $30 million with his unused exception. So not a real big concern, but that is a planning point, obviously, if people have projected net worths beyond the lifetime the joint lifetime exemption, you want to plan around that. You would certainly want insurance being owned in an irrevocable trust. The children were named as the sole beneficiaries of the tax-free life insurance, and we changed the beneficiary designation of the IRA, that $3 million IRA, to the donor advised fund. So the Smith Family Charitable Fund would receive any unused assets from the IRA at the time of her death. Now, what's really important here is nothing really happens until she passes away. So she has full use and discretion over those IRA funds. She can change the beneficiary. She can make partial beneficiary designations, part to her children, part to the donor advised fund in any combination she wants. And she doesn't have to do that up until the day before she passes away, right? So she's got an awful lot of flexibility to use those assets throughout her lifetime if she needed them. The most important part here then is that we were going to accelerate distributions from the IRA and go ahead and pay those taxes beginning in the current year, as opposed to waiting until the problem just got bigger and bigger. So let's walk you through kind of how that works. And for many of you that are not familiar with donor advised funds, there certainly, I was reading a couple articles this morning that seems like it's all the talk and all the rage now amongst affluent clients and setting up donor advised funds because OBBBA limited in 2026 some charitable deduction limits. So a lot of people, there was huge growth at DAF Giving, which is Schwab, and at the Vanguard. They all reported massive increases in the activity of donor advised funds, not only in accounts, but in the amount of money gifted. So it's real easy to set one up. Go on Schwab Charitable or Fidelity or Vanguard. You can do it online. You can fund it in 3 minutes. Actually, I have one, so I am living this and this planning. So let me just touch on one point on this. Donor advised funds provide the donor an immediate tax deduction, and grants are made over time. So as the money in a DAF can be invested, it can grow. You will make grant recommendations annually to your favorite charities. during your lifetime, or your children can do it over their lifetime or their grandchildren, et cetera. And that's kind of where the legacy conversation comes into play. So in this case, what will happen at Jane's passing is that the donor advised fund would be receiving a projected $3.2 million as the beneficiary of the IRA. Now, recall that she started at age 62 with $3 million. So between 62 and age 85, the account will have grown to 3.2 million, assuming 6% return, and normal RMD starting at age 75. So there will still be a substantial balance in that IRA. And again, if she ever needed it up until her time of death, she can take distributions from that IRA as needed. This will eliminate that $1.9 million or almost $2 million of wealth transfer taxes as a result of the income in respect of a decedent from that account. The life insurance will replace the IRA value to the children, income tax free, and the children will also receive custody, if you will, of the Smith family donor advised fund. So in effect, what we've created, if you look at this chart, is scenario one is where Jane does nothing, kind of what their current financial plan was. And you can see that the children would get about $12.5 million and the IRS would get about $2 million. So how do we take that $2 million to zero? The children get slightly less, so from 12.5 to about $12 million, but they also get a $3.2 million donor advised fund that they can make gifts in the family name forever. And it can probably go on for the next generation and the next generation. And that's where the real meaningful why of the planning was for Jane. And that's what kind of clinched the decision. So their wealth, the wealth under their control was 15.2 million as opposed to 12.5 million that was just for their use. Jane loved this plan, and she also saw it as a way to bring the kids together under a common cause and under the family name. So a lot of emotions around this. So it worked really, really well for Jane, and ultimately the kids got involved in their own charitable planning. So kind of here's the decision that needed to be made by Jane. So let's call it 12.6 million to the kids versus 12 million, $1.9 million to the IRS, or zero to the IRS, and then zero to a family legacy, or $3.2 million to a family legacy. And when presented like that, it was a fairly easy decision for her to make because of the values and the culture that she had around family. So this charitable fund, this donor advised fund, if you just use a 5% annual giving rate, her children could potentially donate up to $150,000 per year, possibly in perpetuity at a 5% withdrawal rate. You want to use 4%, it's 120, just over 120,000. Use whatever rate you want. For her, knowing that her children would be doling out funds in their community for years to come in the Smith Family Charitable Fund name was really meaningful to her. And that became part of her planning legacy. And that was probably the most important part that I can say about this entire case study and situation. So just kind of want to leave you with a few thoughts here. What is the ideal client profile? So pre-retirees or retirees, obviously over 59 and a half, because there's going to have to be some distributions from the IRA to fund insurance and obviously to pay taxes on that. So, think about it, if you take $100,000 out of the $3 million RIA, it's all taxable income. You use 35,000 to pay taxes, and you have 65,000 to purchase any tax-free insurance or the replacement of the asset that you'll ultimately give away to the donor advised fund. Single is fine. Jane was single. She is widowed, as I said. Married works really well. Why? Because second to die creates an awful lot of leverage when on a cost per dollar basis of amount of coverage you can use. And of course, it's a second to die need anyway. So second to die works beautifully. Obviously, people that have children, grandchildren that they care about, that they love, that they create an environment where they want those kids to thrive in that kind of environment. They have to have IRA or other qualified plan assets that are really non-essential to their lifestyle, retirement, and consumption. I always talk about when IRAs are used only to take RMDs and you have the ability to defer and defer and defer and keep kicking the can down the road, what you're doing is you're passing that tax problem down to your children. There was a nationwide study not long ago that queried people on how they felt about taxes and were they going to go up or down. 80% of respondents of that survey indicated they thought taxes were going to go up. So the idea behind deferring taxes in a 401k or an IRA plan is that you think you're paying a lower rate of tax today than you will pay later. If 80% of people feel that tax rates are going up, maybe that's a reason to begin to do some of this planning. So the other thing is, of course, there are folks that have IRAs that they need for retirement income. Absolutely not candidates. So you want to make sure that you've got the right planning and that a financial plan has been done and this has been looked at. Obviously, clients want to minimize transfer taxes and that they want or have some sense of leaving a family legacy. So how big is the market? So at the end of first quarter 2025, so this number probably went up during 2025, probably down a little bit now with the adjustment in the markets, but $30 trillion, $30 trillion just between IRAs and 401ks. That to me answers the question of why Willie Sutton robs banks, because that's where the money is. I think there is a massive, massive opportunity here. Now, admittedly, a lot of people will need those 401k or IRA dollars for their retirement spending. That's fine. That's not the client profile we're looking for. So I think there's some tremendous amount of planning to be done, and there's a huge opportunity in this space for us to do some great planning for clients. If you're managing money or if you have clients with IRAs and whatnot, look for clients with large IRA balances. Any size really, just not needed. But if you're going to spend some time working through this, you want to have at least probably around $500,000 of IRA money that's kind of not needed. They don't need it for their lifestyle, and ask them what their intentions are. I mean, it's a fairly simple question. If your financial plan says you can kick the can down the road to age 75 and defer taking RMDs at that age, and that the RMDs are just going to be a tax nuisance, because I've actually talked to clients where they say, I really don't even want to take RMDs, but I have to. I have enough income. I don't want that money. Unfortunately, they're called required minimum distributions because they are required. So you really don't have a choice. And then, here's another thought for those of you that are managing money. When your client's money goes to the IRS, your AUM goes down. When your client's money goes to elder care facilities or they have some sort of long-term care event, your AUM goes down. There are insurance contracts now, as you all know, that can add long-term care riders and create that protection for the client, of course, and for your own book. And for those of you that are making recommendations for the clients that use QCDs or qualified charitable distributions directly from an IRA to a charity, that money is going to charity. So those are all depletions of the assets under your care. You can manage donor advised funds. So that's a way of keeping those dollars under your care and continuing to serve this client and that portion of their asset base on an ongoing basis. So, protect the goose that's laying the golden egg. Long-term care and life insurance can help you preserve and replenish your AUM. And when you think about the IRA dollars, what you're really doing is taking taxable dollars and converting them into tax-free dollars and creating a tax-free legacy for that family. So I will begin to wrap this up. There are my disclosures. We are happy.
Gonzalo?
Yes, Kathy.
Before you wrap it up, we've got some questions coming in.
Yeah, of course.
So Tim McMahon asked, can you discuss the rules after the donor's death regarding the survivors and their control or lack of control of the donor advised fund?
Right. Great question. Thank you for that. So I will give you my experience from my donor advised fund. So when a owner passes away, when a donor advised fund grantor, if you will, passes away, there is a new owner, and there will be a contingent owner. It will be your named children in this case, in Jane's case. Um, Whoever is controlling the donor advised fund simply they'll continue to manage the fund. They can, with your help, if you're the investment advisor, you can create the portfolios, you can manage the assets, you can charge your AUM fees on those assets. Um, the donor advised funds work in a way that and I use Schwab, so I'll just give you Schwab as an example. I send recommendation letters to Schwab each year in December. I make all my planning, all my gifting to charities in December. I go online on their app. I say I want to send $1,000 to this or that charity. 3 or 4 days later, they get a letter that money's coming, and within a week, they get a check. So the successor owner of the account has full control over making recommendations for grants. And the grants, of course, are the ultimate charitable gift. From a funding perspective, at the time of death, when the IRA when the IRA owner dies, and it's the second IRA owner, and so there's no more direct beneficiaries, there's now a non-spousal beneficiary. That money goes directly to the donor advised fund as a beneficiary designation, and then the assets are just available for making grant recommendations to the charities of their choice. I hope I have answered that. It was a fairly long question. If I didn't, please give us a follow-up or feel free to call me offline and we can discuss that further.
Um, Thanks, Gonzalo. I don't
Yep.
see any other questions. I didn't mean to interrupt you during the
Fine.
very important disclosure
Very
uh,
important
part
disclosures.
of your presentation. So why don't you revert back to that?
Yeah, no, I don't need to read the
Oh,
disclosures. I left them up there on the screen long enough so everybody could take a look at them. But listen, our goal is to continue to provide some value here. We thank you for your attention on this today. We hope that this idea gives you something to talk to your clients about. And again, I'll just leave you with this thought. People think that taxes are going up. There's 25, 29, almost $30 trillion in the market. I assume a good chunk of that is probably large IRAs. I think it was Fidelity who recently announced in their 401k practice that there are almost maybe just slightly more than 650,000 401k accounts with over $1 million. That's not a huge amount of money in today's world, but that's just their 401k balance as reported by Fidelity. I assume those clients probably have other assets and other holdings and so on and so forth, hopefully managed by everybody that's on this call. But ask those questions. I think that you'll find a lot of people saying, and you'll also find a lot of financial plans that contemplate just taking RMDs at age 73 or 75, depending on how old the client is. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here, not only to do good for yourself, but to do good for your clients. And, the other thing that I'll leave you with is we are all philanthropists, whether we like it or not. And it's called taxes, and taxes go to fund the government, and government pays for military and other non-discretionary spending issues. But the discretionary spending portion of the federal budget goes to research and medical care and social issues and all these other things. I don't know. I'd kind of like to have a little bit more control over where my money goes than sending it to Washington and letting them decide who gets the money on the discretionary spending side. So, charities have a role in our society. It does actually complement and take some heat off of our government. And think about it. Why do they give us a tax deduction to make charitable donations? Because they know in Washington that that a lot of research, that a lot of social services, and that a lot of other things that are required to run this society will be done by charity. So you can either do it intentionally or unintentionally. The choice is yours. And I think every client needs to hear that story.
uh, thank you, Gonzalo. We've got a couple additional questions that have come in. One of them wants to know, are we going to make this presentation available to the folks that have dialed in to listen to this presentation?
We would be happy to make the presentation available. Just send us an email. You can send an email to lisa.mitchell at specialtyprogramgroup.com, or call your wholesaler or call your contact or call me directly. Somebody will get this to you. We'd be thrilled to. And by the way, we have white papers and articles and a bunch of other material on this that we're happy to provide as well.
And I recognize that every situation is different, but one of our viewers has commented that he has a client that this information would be applicable, and if he's shared it with him before, and he's trying to get him to move off of dead center.
Okay.
So besides the comment, Gonzalo, that you make that we are all philanthropists,
Yeah.
whether we intend to be or not, and without knowing obviously the details of Tom's specific circumstances, do you have any, high level thoughts about how to get a client to take action?
Tom, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So at the end of the day, I would be happy to talk to you offline, one-on-one, and explore that further. Would love to know a little bit more about your client and what their financial situation is. But I think the most important part that you can say to your client is, this is not an irrevocable decision, number one. Number two, the IRA assets are available to them throughout their lifetime if they ever need them. And number three, I would ask probably the question that most impacts people that I've had this conversation with is, would you like to pay the taxes, or would you like to leave the tax problem to your children? And if we can create efficiencies around that, then we need to have a conversation, because that's kind of where the difference. I've seen a lot of IRA max and annuity max and other pension max situations, and we've all seen those before. This isn't it's an IRA max with a twist. I mean, we're adding the donor advised fund element because it changes the conversation. IRA max opportunities are certainly out there all over the place. I don't know if you've actually brought in, Tom, the donor advised fund or the legacy conversation into your clients, ecosphere. But maybe that's a way to do it as well. So again, I would welcome a call with you personally. Just give me a call anytime. I'm happy to discuss that case.
Thank you, Gonzalo. And for those that are again asking for that email address, it's Lisa.Mitchell, Mitchell, at specialtyprogramgroup.com.
Kathy, any more questions? If not, we can wrap up.
I do not see any additional questions, Gonzalo. Thank
Great.
you.
Well, I want to thank everybody again for logging in and dialing into the call. We hope to continue to add value to your practices every day, but expect to have a webinar like this probably on a once a month basis, and we will be making announcements in short order. So check your emails. Look forward to seeing you on our next call. Thank you very much.